talk a little bit tonight about using Wixie during National Book Month, which is actually starting tomorrow. I mean, there's so many things I love about Wixie, but I think the reading and writing, specifically the multimedia writing, is by far my favorite. And there's so many wonderful creative ways to engage students with the books that they're reading. And actually, I think one of the things Heather puts it nicely here, it gives them the freedom to get creative. And, I have two non-readers at home, so a standard book report would simply throw them over the edge, having to do that in addition to some of the reading. I know they really struggle with that. So getting creative, because they both have high comprehension, they just don't enjoy reading. And so trying to find ways, I'm constantly trying to find different ways to engage them with the books, talk more about the characters, get interested in that. And maybe one of the most interesting things recently is my 10-year-old is all of a sudden interested in Harry Potter, and I've never been able to get her interested in that before, and that is due to social media. So she's starting to see it on YouTube and other places and TikToks with her friends. So that's been sort of a hidden blessing with all of that. But in addition to stories, I mean, we talk about National Book Month, and I think of all of us think about our favorite stories. And I definitely want to talk about doing projects with Wixie that connect us to literature and fiction. But at the same time, I wanted to talk about projects that we can do to help engage kids with nonfiction text or informational text as well. And that is actually why I I'm going to focus on 4 ideas, and Carolyn will start sharing in the chat some additional links as things come up. And I will share this presentation at the end, and in the bottom, this is a Google Slides presentation, in the bottom note field, there are all sorts of links to additional blogs and resources, because there are thousands and thousands of different ways that we can do this. I posted a blog on the Tech for Learning blog today that was, I think, 7 different ways you can use Wixie for book reviews, also sort of in that National Book Month theme. So this isn't really even talking so much about reviewing it, although these could be used for that possibility too. So the 4 I kind of want to talk about is looking at creating wanted posters that help us connect to content in the stories that we're reading, comics, and again, using them in different ways. We'd more likely retell with a comic than I would with a wanted poster. I might explore again characteristics of a protagonist or antagonist. Looking at ebooks, creating and publishing our own books, and ebooks, being both, again, nonfiction and fiction, and then sort of looking at ways that we can use interviews, which is one of also my favorite types of projects that we can do with kids, is getting them to interview characters from books, animals, historic figures, etc. So I'm picking those 4 topics, and I kind of wanted to share some examples from both of those, and I'll try to, again, keep this light and quick. I started off with informational versions of wanted posters because I think that's a fun way to explore history. Obviously, it makes the most sense when we're talking about maybe westward expansion in this country, but it gets us to think about characters or historical figures in different ways, and it sort of avoids that, which a big one is avoiding the copy and paste. We don't want to just do 3 facts about. And getting kids to go beyond that and apply the information, or have to massage it just slightly so they can't do that copy and paste. And I don't know if you can see the one on the right-hand side. It's a wanted poster for a right triangle. So sort of an interesting one. I have a wonderful wanted poster for dihydrogen monoxide. I don't know if you've ever heard that, which is just essentially water, but it's sort of a funny, villainous way to look at water that way that a student has done creatively. And again, it's sort of looking at physical features, yes, but behaviors, personalities, and again, in this case, personifying something like a triangle, personifying a water molecule, etc., which again is that sort of pushes on that both analytical and creative thinking. Wanted posters for book characters, and maybe in this case focusing on the antagonist instead of the protagonist, is sort of maybe a more natural way to do this. But I've seen friends, and this isn't really necessarily connected to a book, but do wanted posters for acts of kindness, etc., and you know, sharing different ways to think about that. So again, it's sort of that lateral thinking with this. Another fun way to use a wanted poster is with the vocabulary that students are exploring in the classroom, or getting with, not just exploring in the classroom, but getting from the books that they're reading, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, and using sort of, you know, commonly found in as ways for word aliases, synonyms, and is an alias. And an antonym is its enemy. Again, sort of fun ways to think about this and play with information with our kids. This is a super simple one in Wixie. There are I just have two example wanted poster templates. Wixie is filled with them. Can you see the wanted poster? Somebody, Carolyn, just say yes. If not, does somebody come on and tell me? But this is just a standard one, but Wixie also includes one that is a vocabulary focused one. There are actually I think there's even a book review version of the wanted poster. So there are lots of different options with the wanted poster idea. And so again, it works, I think, really well for both fiction and nonfiction. One of probably my all-time favorite class projects, especially if you work with kids in the lower grades, is to take the books that you're reading and write your own versions of them, which is sort of perfect for those emerging readers and writers. The photo or the image on the left is an example from a student page that they read The Grouchy Ladybug, and actually they turned this into a math project. And so after reading The Grouchy Ladybug, they looked at elapsed time, and they had to show elapsed time between the different events that, and this was the Grouchy Butterfly as the example here. Another one of my favorite books, and I was gonna take it out to show it, is Judy Barrett's Things That Are Most in the World. She's the author also of Spaghetti with a Chance of Meatballs. But she has this wonderful book about superlatives. So I think the first one is, the funniest thing in the world is a frog riding a unicycle, juggling ice cream cones, and about to hit a banana. And so the idea is that it talks about all these superlatives, but provides a context clue about the meaning of the superlative itself. And so if we are in Wixie, here's an example of a student project. And we won't worry about listening to this. This isn't a collection of all the student projects. I think the best way to do a project like this is to have all the kids in the class share or choose their favorite superlative, write a sentence that gives clues about the meaning of that, and then create an illustration again to help the reader understand the meaning of the word. And so the audio, I don't know, we'll click it and we'll see.
We can't see anything other than your slide.
Okay, thank you, hold on. Okay, so let me do this, stop. We're gonna change, and hold on a sec, let me put this in here. Sorry, get it, come on, let me get these in here. One sec, and let me move this into there. Okay, and expand larger. Oh, come on. I still can't switch it. Hold on, I've got to get Wixie over here. There we go. Oh, come on, it won't go in. Come on, inside there. I was hoping that my Chrome tab would make that work. Sorry. So here is the Wixie example of Things That Are Most in the World, or one of the students' pages from it. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can present and share. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, yep. Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So this is the fastest thing in the world, obviously, is a cheetah driving a Lamborghini. And again, choosing that superlative, the fattest thing in the world is a hippo who ate 10 lions, writing that sentence, and then again, recording that. And this was an example that one student did to create his own most book, which you could do in the older grades. But again, I sort of think assigning each student their own, or, you know, again, talking to kids about superlatives: biggest, fattest, largest, smallest, tiniest, prickliest, wettest, you know, and letting them pick their favorite one, create the single page for that, and then use the Wixie import pages feature to combine them all into a class book. I think that's probably the best use of classroom time to create this, but it's also fun for kids to feel like being published authors. And so if they're a little bit older, you can sort of make that happen by assigning them both of those things. Another example is it's sort of a, I don't know, like this is a primary example, I guess, would be, you know, reading Jack Keats, Ezra Jack Keats' Pet Show. And this is just a simple superlative, the cutest pet, the biggest pet. And so kids only have to put one word in there. Again, that kind of on that superlative theme. This is a really fun one, and that it's gingerbread, gingerbread, what do you see? Or Grinch, Grinch, what do you see? So they took brown bear, and created a holiday version of that. This would be a super fun one to do around Halloween. Again, it's sort of that cause and effect sequence kind of properties where kids would be able to, again, each create a page, record their voice, combine them all together, and create a class book. And one of the fun things in Wixie is to be able to simply go to download, create a PDF. I think that's always a fun one because every single parent can look at a PDF on their phone. And most readers on your computer that do PDFs now do the sound pretty well also. So it's kind of a good reinforcement for kids to be in the car and looking on their phone. The other option there is an ebook, which exports an EPUB file. Which again, you can drop on an iPad so kids can look and read their own books and again, feel like published authors. Sort of a fun one with this too is using something like a Shutterfly site, those online photo sites, is simply also go down and simply download the images. And when you download those images, upload them to a photo sharing site and turn them into a book. Often those photo books aren't very expensive, and you might be able to get a PTA grant to publish something like that, or at least publish one or two for your classroom and then share a link with parents that way. Another example would be looking at sort of, again, the nonfiction books. The ANT project that I have over here on the side, and I won't click out and link to it, but this was it was a combined first and second grade classroom, and they had within their reading series, they had a book about ants, and the kids, for some reason, they just went crazy about ants. It's like, okay, well, you know, somebody said, well, I heard there's army ants. Well, I heard, and so they're like, ooh, army ants. If kids are interested, let's talk about this as another way to look up nonfiction information, and we'll go online together. So she goes on her computer, you know, pops up a search, and they start looking at websites, and they're not inappropriate being, you know, negative or bad, but the reading level is just way too high for these kids, and the information's more than they want. There aren't good pictures. Again, it's not laid out for kids. So what her class decided to do is they had come up with they started to discover all the different kinds of ants that there are, carpenter ants, weaver ants, etc. And so she grouped her kids together, and each group did the hard legwork of taking all of those ugly sites and trying to pull information out of them. And then they recreated their own nonfiction or informational textbooks about ants that she then printed. You can print as a booklet. She printed some booklets, but she also had, at the time, it was the iPod Touch. And she could put the books on the iPod Touch so kids could check them out from her classroom library. So they had their own classroom digital library. But sort of, I love this idea because who better to write at a second grade reading level than a second grader? So if you're ever struggling to find, not that you can create nonfiction books about every topic, but sometimes it's a wonderful opportunity to give kids a real task, because there are lots of kids within your school likely, or within your district, or even your community, who would love to find out information about especially interesting animals, but don't have access to reading materials for those. It's kind of a fun way to do that. And I think she ended up, so again, they spread it out to their district, use an overdrive system to spread it to the whole district that way. Another fun sort of informational text way to take an ebook is to take the topics that, again, you're reading about in those informational texts and creating an ABC book for it. And again, I would, you could ask every kid to make, their own alphabet book, the entire alphabet, or just assign a letter to each student. And again, the alphabet letters are really nice because you can sort of strategically give kids letters that are easy to find answers for, but all kids can take, in this case, B is for Susan, B Anthony. And, it's making sure all kids, so this is the other one, is when they find the topic that they want to do, that everybody's on the same page, and we're managing that in our classroom with the alphabet written somewhere, so we all know what students are doing which pieces, but it doesn't have to be a huge one. So this is, again, this was actually a middle school class that was trying to work on women's history for elementary kids. So there were several students in this particular class who were very interested in this, and then creating that nonfiction piece for the younger students at their school. So again, ebooks, responses to literature. I didn't even talk about narrative writing, but I wanted to keep the focus on sort of a National Book Month and reading response kind of a thing. So, you know, reading for information or reading for enjoyment. I think comics are probably one of the most fun ways you can get kids to summarize and retell stories. The 4 panels are so wonderful, and not, you know, especially if you limit it to say 4 pages, it really focuses kids on identifying what the key events are. This is actually a 4th grade project, and I think it has quite a few pages. So let me switch over to this one just to show you what the story looks like. But I remember talking with a teacher on this one, and this particular student couldn't identify, or was really struggling to identify, which scenes were the most important. So he couldn't get it down to just 4 of those scenes. However, it was really exciting because this student also didn't necessarily want to make that many pages all the time, or put that much effort in. So the teacher said, okay, if you're gonna, you know, if this is interesting to you and you want to do it, then, you know, I'll let you work on each of these pages and do a little bit more, even if it's maybe not the perfect summarize and retell. That sort of small piece of, here I'll go to another one, that small piece of the text in a thought bubble or a conversation bubble, again, also sort of forces you to collapse and find the most important information in there. And that summarizing is one of those, you know, wonderful instructional strategies that we know really helps kids learn. And in this case too, the retelling, you know, just it's being concise, trying to come up with that specific information. And again, if you do a 4-page comic, I'm sure you all know that you can go to print, and I could go to booklet, and it's going to create a 4-page booklet based on this. And what that does is I could do 4 panels. Oh, I hit booklet instead of that. 4 panels as a comic. This one instead allows you to take that piece of paper and fold it in half, and then fold it in half. And again, oops, sorry. So you have page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, in something small, again, that you can summarize that way. Although kids might like to prefer to see the comic book style of that. But sort of a fun way to do that, and be able to share student information that way. I kind of like taking comics, and I think, I don't know if you remember the Mouse comics from Art Spiegelman, about surviving through the Holocaust. Is sort of the first time a comic was shown to be a viable medium for raising awareness and informing people. And so using comics with nonfiction is also a wonderful way to sort of explore that. I think there's been explosive growth in graphic novels and comics for fiction in our schools, but it's not quite there, I think, for nonfiction. But a fun way to sort of share, again, here's when I'm a worm, many think I'm gross, but I have a big job. And going through, just again, highlighting key features of how worms help soil. And again, those 4 panels, simplifying what the content is, making me rewrite it. In this case, because again, I have to tell it sort of that first person perspective that really helps students stop the copy and paste. Because this isn't a collection of 4 facts. A comic is a story. So what is the story there? This daily dose is a little bit of an older student. I think this was a middle of our high school student who did this, and it actually has to do with taking steroids. And so they had to pick a health issue that was coming up. I'm sure some people chose vaping, drugs, alcohol, other kinds of things, smoking that way. But this was the student's choice that way. And comics are sort of something kids might actually read. And that's why the students chose to do them as comics, based again on the research that they were doing about health, changing someone's behavior based on creating a comic. And then I think probably one of my favorite things to do with students is actually have them interview a book character. And again, perhaps one of my favorite things about doing an interview is it helps my students understand that it's more important to be able to ask good questions than it is to know the answer to everything. So as we craft this for our students, we might need to give them a little bit of direction, but rather than saying, here's question 1, here's question 2, question 3, that's like a worksheet. Like, why take all the thinking away from my kids and do all the work myself when I could, you know, if I felt I needed to give my kids some structure, I might do my best to draw that out in the class ahead of time so that we're coming up with, okay, well, what questions should we ask a character? Do we ask each character the same thing, or should our questions be specific to different books in the context of what's happening in the book itself? And so this is an interview of Brian Robeson from Gary Paulson's Hatchet. And I think that's the second page is the one I want to see. Oh, no, the third page, the question. I mean, something simple is, how are you feeling when the pilot died and you had to fly the plane? And so, you know, there's a student answer here, but it's also drawing from, and again, maybe it's not evidence from text as much as examples from the text as students are growing into this, but there were so many buttons and gears, I did not know which one to press. And that's not a direct quote from the book, but that's very much a, oh yes, you actually read the story, so I can believe that, you know, okay, maybe you do have a little bit of comprehension about this. But it's not just retelling the story, it's showing character motivation, trying to empathize with what's happening, understand experiences, again, take on that perspective of the student in, or the character in the story, to be able to do that. And this is sort of also, I think, probably more fun if you can have 2 students actually reading. I don't know if you can hear this.
No.
No, you can't?
Oh,
sorry.
Kind
okay.
of.
I'll skip it then. We'll go back here so it switches. Oh. It's going to stop. There we go. We'll switch back. Sorry. So again, you know, having kids talk back and forth, that allows them to be both the interviewer and the interviewee. The one on the right is an interview with Marvin the Barred Owl. And this is, again, 2 students, I think Ellie and Zachary. And Ellie becomes the interviewer and Zachary takes on the persona of the owl. But in this case, these are 2 students. I don't know if you can actually see they use green screen to put themselves in, and they did an interview with Chief Pontiac. So there are both of the students, like, so, you know, holding the microphone. And then in this case, they each take turns asking questions, and they have, I think in this case, they actually had the teacher answer them to be the narrator for that other student so that the voices were different. But simple questions. This is someone from history. And again, the depth of the question, the depth of the answer is going to be based, you're going to get it. It's going to be a clear example of how interested your kids are in the topic, how much effort they put into it, how sophisticated their writing and thinking is at any given time. But again, it sort of allows us, again, it's that empathy taking and that perspective taking that helps us understand what's happening with a character and why might they think this way. Because we don't always agree with what characters do, but it's important for, again, an author, and this helps us, the best reader or the best writers are also some of the, you know, best readers, or not the best readers, but read the most quantity of books, because they have so many different ideas for ways that we can share that motivation and other things. So this not only helps students maybe have a closer connection to the text or the content that they're reading, have deeper understanding of it because they're asked to apply it. And again, that slightly first person question and answer format, that's not just a copy and paste of information that way. So I don't want to talk for too long, but I think, you know, kind of as we go through this, is giving our kids more and more opportunities to show us what they know in a lot of different ways. Because that, again, it's not just doing it just, it's sort of the same thing, that reaching out to lots of different learners and giving them multiple opportunities to sort of impress us. And one of the things I'm not sure everyone's aware of in Wixie are comprehension choice boards. So this is, I'm going to actually see if I can open it up. And if you wanted to find it in Wixie, it is actually, I think, in your templates and language arts and reading comprehension. Is the, oh, sorry, yes, there it is, reading comprehension. So if I wanted to do this one, here's the, sorry, that was the one that was open. Here's an example of a literature choice board. So the way sort of, and I can customize in a minute, choose what kind of project you'd like to make to demonstrate your comprehension. Select a picture to see a sample. So in this one, each of these links to a different sample. And then this actually links to, I want to create a character trait cluster. When I do that, it opens a character trait cluster, and I can simply say customize to start working. So I'm actually, it won't say customize for your kids. Actually, it will just put it in their project folder because I'm logged in as a teacher, so I get the option to customize or not customize. But if your students are logged into Wixie when they see this choice board and they click that, it will simply open that up. But if I wanted to make any changes to these, this is simply taking advantage of, oops, sorry, I'm gonna have to unlock these. Hold on a second. Let me do this because it's gonna be the easiest. This is hard to do. There we go. Just for the sake of argument. Because those are each locked, that's what sort of automatically triggers. You can see, even if I hover over these, I don't seem to be able to edit. I have to select and unlock them each. And so to do that, this is sort of a nice trick to know is if you just click it with the arrow, it's gonna go. So click away from it and sort of drag across it to select. So now as a teacher, if I didn't want to do a coat of arms, you know, I could come up with, let's just, I don't remember what are some of the other options. Let's just do book review. Then I could change that text that way and copy and paste that one of the URLs for the book review. And so you can see that this one links to the sample on the right, and each of these things links to the actual template. So it's sort of easy to set up that way. The other comprehension choice board, sorry, back in my templates, is for informational text. And so again, sort of in the same way, but a little bit of a different idea. Oh, I didn't even talk about headline news. This is another fun one. I think for both books, you can actually do it. I shared that as an example for a book review in the blog today also. But flea jumps 80 times its own height. So sort of taking a fun fact about it and turning it into a news article with a big headline, and either just a big headline and a photo or additional text depending on the age of the students. Again, there's an interview. The comic, each of these opens up a different, again, template. This is a 4-panel on one page. I think the Charlotte's Web and other ones were just 4 pages that were then exported or downloaded as or printed as 4 pages on that. So there's quite a few different options for ways that you can do this. But I sort of love giving kids choice for how they want to respond to a book, especially if I think in a library media situation where I want to give them, and actually that's another great article, Carolyn, I don't think that's in the, there's a creative educator article on comprehension choice boards, and this would sort of be a great way to do that. And this is a media specialist in Julie Gilbert in Georgia who has choice boards that she's created for each grade level, and then over the course of each semester, kids have to do 3 of the projects on her choice board. She has a lot more options than I do here, especially for the older students. But sort of, again, a fun way when they're coming to the library, that's how they're supposed to use their time. They're supposed to use it to both read and create. And so she's got days that they do either of those things, and she's got devices in her media center. So I think that again, that choice board is letting our students begin to understand how they are supposed to share their knowledge and information with us. So again, that was sort of, oh goodness, wanted posters and the interviews, the ebooks, and comics were sort of the 4 I chose. But if you go into Wixie, into your teacher, if your templates folder, there's a folder for teachers, and there's a set of ideas boards there. And I created one here for comprehension, and it has a lot of those things from the 2 student choice boards, but it really is just sort of a one-stop shop for a lot of different creative ways that you can think about having kids respond to the literature that you're reading. I think a super fun one, and you see this on Instagram all the time, is the book bento. And it's sort of more of an artful arrangement of things that, and I think mostly adults do it, but it's kind of a super fun example. And if I say looked at this example, get the ideas board up, and looked at the book bento, so I'm going to customize here. It's got to load. There we go. it opens up a blank page, and then each of these different things, and some of them actually are additional. Oh, that one's a hyperlink. I don't know what it goes to. Hopefully it's good. Oh, of course, that goes to something that doesn't show. Let's see about this one. Oh, it goes to that. Oh, that goes to, and an ad, of course, too. But a jazz cafe. So it links out to jazz music. So not that a book bento, it's not designed to have additional hyperlinks, but you could include those if you wanted to have that. The Oreo opinion organizer, like especially for very young primary learners who have to now express opinions about books, but also support them with reasons and examples. Though an Oreo, so it is opinion, reason, example, opinion again, is a great organizer to do. Oh, character coats of arms. I love that as a fun comprehension activity. But something as simple as character traits. Again, as we're identifying what those are, I don't know if you can see the additional here. Let me just see if I can select that. If you go to any of those, you can link out to I think each trait has an additional text box that is evidence from the text to sort of prove or support the argument that that is a legitimate character trait. Now, obviously, we're not going to do that in first grade, but I could, if my kids say, well, Wilbur's happy, I could say, okay, well, why do you think Wilbur's happy? And I could start pushing them towards some of those things, because a lot of this is simply giving kids the prompt to start conversations and making things a little bit more interesting to them. And I don't know if you can see within this comprehension ideas board, if you go up to the right, you can see that it has 3 pages. It actually has the literature and informational text student choice boards as page 2 and 3 of the same file. So if you find that, and again, these ideas boards are in your templates and then in your teacher folder. And there are ideas boards in here, and there are quite a few different ones, but this is specifically on the comprehension. And just so you know, the top two lines, excuse me for my clicking everywhere, the top 2 lines are mostly focused on ideas connected to literature, and the bottom 2 are informational text. But again, comics can be either, wanted posters can be either. Most every kind of product that we can ask kids to do can be a response to content that's fictional or content that I can apply in a different way to inform, raise awareness, retell, etc. So I think, again, that ideas board is the fun way to do that. So as we're looking at, Wixie making stuff in Wixie is a great sort of way to share your enthusiasm for reading, especially if you create something to showing that high quality example to your kids when you start is crucial. And so picking a book that is your favorite, or you've read to them, or that that they love, can really help amp up and get them excited about reading. Don't assume they love reading as much as you do, but your enthusiasm, of course, it makes all the difference in the world, because it does. You watch a TED Talk, it doesn't even matter what people are talking about. If they're passionate and knowledgeable about their topic, it's enjoyable to listen to them. It's enjoyable to learn from them and work with them. And so, this, again, getting creative with these kinds of things and creating a space where reading and connecting to reading and responding to literature and informational text is exciting and open and fun and collaborative, is really, really, I think, a great way to help pass on that love of reading. And again, as we're doing that, making sure, and I think that the easy part about Wixie is allowing us to publish it beyond the classroom. And again, even if it's as simple as printing out that 4-page notebook to take home. That way they can show off, because our families are, are wonderful audiences. But creating a book that you could give to other classrooms. If kids are writing research ebooks, about how to make ice cream, those kinds of things, that's wonderful to be able to share that and pass that on, and tells our kids that the work they're doing for us in the classroom is really not just for us. because otherwise it just is a worksheet and it goes in the garbage, and it's, you know, yes, it is. It's for teachers and for formative assessment, and that's great, but there's not as much value in that for the learner. So giving them sort of a worldwide audience by putting a video out there, a slideshow, PDFs, things that we can share, especially if they sort of took the initiative to choose what they wanted to make and how they wanted to make it, because not every kid is going to be interested in making a comic. Some kids are going to want to draw it, or, you know, draw all the original art because they're great at art, and some other kids are going to be like, I don't want to do that at all. and that's sort of why, you know, a lot of those projects, I think all of those projects can also start from a blank page. And the only reason they link to a template is simply because a lot of people, and adults especially, need something on the screen to sort of, you know, take the fear away, because a blank page is exciting, it's creative, it's open, there's so many possibilities with it, but it's also very intimidating because sometimes it's hard to just get started. And sometimes working on those templates can help us get started as well. So that is the conclusion of my Wixie during National Book Month. And we can go ahead and take questions in the chat, or if you want to share a question, I guess that'd probably be the best way to do it. If there have been some coming in, Carolyn can jump in.